Policymakers at the state and federal levels are advancing kid safety measures that will impact all internet companies, including startups, and their users. Many kid safety proposals, including the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act, which recently passed the Senate, will push companies to remove more content, make their products less useful, and collect more data on their users in the name of protecting kids. If you've been paying attention to what lawmakers have to say about the Senate passed bill, it's probably been hard to follow along.
This bill is Pandora's box for censorship.
There's no censorship in this bill. None.
Why are we talking about censorship? Let's take the example of a startup that teaches users to code through games. The startup also has a forum where users can discuss bugs and share coding projects. And the startup will recommend forum topics based on what the user has shown interest in the past. To comply with this kid safety proposal, the startups will first have to figure out which of their users are young. We'll come back to this in a minute. And then they'll have to figure out which content created by other users might cause harm to young users' mental health. In this example, a voting registration app and the ensuing conversation about an upcoming presidential election might reasonably contribute to anxiety. To avoid violating the law, the startup would stop recommending and probably even remove any content that could contribute to anxiety. And to be extra careful, they might remove it for all users, regardless of their age. So why do the bill's authors keep saying,
"It is not a content bill"?
It is about product design.
The bill limits the use of design features that keep people engaged, like autoplay, notifications, and personalized recommendation algorithms. Our hypothetical startup could be in trouble because they recommend content based on users' interests. When talking about design features, people often compare the internet to
A car that is unsafe and is required to have seat belts.
When that Boeing plane, when that door fell out, what happened? Grounded the fleet.
But algorithms that surface relevant content for users aren't like cars without seatbelts or airplanes with doors that fall off. In those instances, the lack of a seatbelt or the falling off doors can only cause harm. Algorithms generally are crucial for organizing the internet's vast expanse of content, and personalized recommendation algorithms help make the internet more useful. The gamified coding startup might use an algorithm to recommend content on a specific coding language, or API error codes, or how to build a browser plugin that identifies made in the USA items when you're shopping online. If you like the algorithm when it helps amateur developers learn to build a made in the USA browser plugin, but you have a problem with an algorithm surfacing content you don't like, then the problem isn't the algorithm, it's the content. While the bill's focus is design features, it will impact how internet companies host and help users find content. Then you add in that the bill will be enforced not only by the Federal Trade Commission, but also by each state's attorney general.
The bill gives the unlimited right and cause of action for every state attorney general. Some of them are on the far left, some of them are on the far right, and you can imagine each of them have their own pet causes.
There is no empowering of attorneys general.
The bill has narrower state attorneys general enforcement than an earlier version, but it definitely still allows for state attorneys general enforcement. Our hypothetical gamified coding startup could absolutely be sued by state attorneys general if they felt the startup didn't do enough to make their website kid-friendly, which would mean having to build a separate version of the website that doesn't recommend relevant content to users. Back to the problem of figuring out which users are young. For the vast majority of companies, it will be easiest, but not easy or inexpensive, to use a third-party age assurance provider. Let's look at our hypothetical gamified coding startup. It has 300,000 users and they employ 5 people full-time. They recently raised $1.2 million in their first seed funding round, which gives them about $55,000 per month to cover all of their expenses until they raise money again in about 2 years. Those monthly expenses include salaries for the 5 employees, and the average engineer salary in their Midwest city is $80,000. If they need to verify or estimate all of their users' ages, they'll turn to a third-party provider that does things like scan users' faces to estimate their age, verifies a user uploaded government ID like a driver's license, or looks at the rest of the user's activity online to guess how old they are. These services will cost about $50,000 in initial setup costs, and then about $1.50 per user. For the startup with 300,000 users, the total cost will be $500,000. That's about half of their seed round funding, or about a year of salaries for their team. What happens next? This bill has only passed the Senate, and it's unclear if the House will take it up. Though these types of measures have a way of showing up in rushed, must-pass legislation towards the end of the year. And several state laws that contain similar requirements have been held up in federal courts where judges say they're likely unconstitutional. Meanwhile, Congress could be working on proposals that advance kids' safety without some of these trade-offs, like passing a federal privacy law, investing in digital literacy and mental health resources, and making sure law enforcement can actually go after people committing crimes online. Whatever comes next, it's crucial that policymakers keep startups and their users in mind.